From the moment Emily Carson woke up that morning, something felt off, like a shift in the wind that would carry her to places she never expected. She headed to the Moonbeam Diner, where she waited tables day in and day out, nursing dreams bigger than the dingy little booths she served. Little did she know, before the sun set behind the dusty skyline of East Greenhill, her life would change forever. A chance encounter with a millionaire customer would set off a whirlwind of drama, heartbreak, and revelations that would force her to confront a family secret. And worst of all, by day's end, she'd be out of a job. Emily Carson had clocked in early to the Moonbeam Diner that Tuesday morning. Tucked away in a rundown strip of East Greenhill, the diner was known more for its greasy hash browns and flickering neon sign than for any exquisite culinary experience. The clientele usually consisted of weary truck drivers, working mums in a rush, and the occasional group of teenagers cutting class for a clandestine plate of pancakes. Emily, at 24, had worked there for nearly 4 years. It wasn't the dream she nurtured, but it paid her rent on the tiny apartment she shared with her roommate Cassie. Outside, the sky hung low, with clouds tinted silver, threatening rain. Emily hustled through the door, greeted by the smell of frying bacon. She offered a tired smile to Juan, the line cook juggling eggs on the grill, then headed straight for the staff locker to stow her bag. She was used to the routine. Tie, her long brown hair, back secure the pink apron around her waist, double-check the specials board, and brace herself for the day's hustle. That morning, though, something intangible felt different. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the clang of utensils and the chatter of early customers felt unusually charged. Despite her exhaustion, she tried to summon some optimism. Maybe something good would happen today. Soon the tables began to fill up with the usual faces. Ms. Dempsey from the pharmacy on her coffee break, Trevor the mailman grabbing a quick bite before his route a few passers-by. Then shortly after 9 a.m., someone stepped into the diner who seemed out of place. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, his silver hair combed back neatly. That alone set him apart from the typical diner crowd. He wore an air of quiet authority, like someone who was used to snapping his fingers and seeing others jump to attention. Emily grabbed a menu plastered on her practiced waitress smile and walked over. She felt a quickening in her pulse as she caught the sharp, intelligent glint in his eyes. He looked vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place him. Morning, she began offering the laminated menu. "Can I get you started with some coffee?" "Please," the man replied, flashing a polite, tight-lipped smile. His voice was calm, but carried a timbre of confidence that made Emily curious. She poured him coffee, standing by his table longer than usual, waiting to see if he needed anything else. Something in his gaze made her wonder if she'd seen him on TV, possibly on a business channel or in some article online. Realizing she was lingering, Emily cleared her throat and said she'd return shortly to take his order. In the kitchen, she found herself mulling over the feeling that she'd stumbled upon someone important. It wasn't that she expected East Greenhill to never see well-dressed folks but millionaires, if that's what he was rarely stopped by the Moonbeam for coffee and scrambled eggs. Once the man ordered a simple breakfast of poached eggs, whole-grain toast and fruit, Emily served him with her usual efficiency, occasionally stealing glances to see if she recognized his face. He was polite, soft-spoken, and didn't demand anything unusual, but a strange tension settled over her each time he looked at her, as though he wanted to say something but hesitated. After finishing his meal, he asked for the check. Emily placed the bill face down and said, "Have a nice day, sir." He reached into his wallet and handed her 2 crisp $100 bills. "Keep the change," he said, offering that same polite smile. Emily's eyes widened. The check was only $18, A tip like that could buy her groceries for the week. Her heart soared. "Thank you, sir. This is extremely generous," she stammered. "Call it an investment," the man said enigmatically. "In good people." She barely mustered a response before he gave a short nod, stood, and made his way out. Her mind spun with possibility. Maybe it was just a fluke, but something told her she hadn't seen the last of him. Emily's spirits soared for the rest of the morning. She wiped counters with a newfound energy, daydreaming about how she'd use that surprise windfall. Maybe fix her beat-up car or get that dress for Cassie's upcoming birthday party. But her mood didn't last long. Just before noon, a group of boisterous teenagers slid into a booth, pounding the table and demanding service. They wanted burgers, fries, sodas, fast. Emily took their orders calmly, ignoring their rudeness. She was used to customers of all stripes. But just as she was about to hand the order slip to Juan in the kitchen, her manager Don Reeves cornered her. Don was a man of perpetual frowns and barking orders, with a habit of collecting complaints like trophies. "What's with you dawdling at tables today?" he snapped, crossing his arms. "We got a backlog of customers waiting to be seated, and you're too busy socializing to notice. I'm sorry, Don, table 3's a bit rowdy, and I don't need excuses." He shot back. The Hendersons left because they were tired of waiting. "That's on you." Emily bristled. She had no idea the Hendersons had come in. No one had told her a new group arrived. Still, Don had a knack for blaming everything on his staff. She forced herself to nod. "I'll try to move quicker." "It won't happen again." Don eyed her suspiciously. "I don't pay you to stand around. Now get table 4 cleaned and seated." Emily bit her tongue to hold back a retort. She'd been busting her tail all morning, like she did every day. The little joy from her large tip started to vanish. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she caught herself thinking about the silver-haired man again. She wanted to hold on to that moment, that feeling of significance, but Don's attitude pulled her harshly back to reality. Despite the friction, Emily soldiered on, weaving between tables, delivering orders, refilling coffee cups. The busier the diner became, the tighter Don's scowl seemed to grow. Around 2 p.m., the lunch rush began to die down. Emily sneaked a quick sip of water by the soda fountain when Don's voice shot through the diner. "Emily, where's the double cheeseburger for table 2? She blinked, confused. She'd just delivered it. She hurried over to the table in question, only to see an elderly couple munching on the very cheeseburger in question. "It's here," she said, in a measured tone. Don strode over, face red. "I've had enough of your attitude today. You keep messing up orders and ignoring customers. I haven't messed anything up." Emily objected, heat rushing to her cheeks. "I'm doing my job." He pointed a finger in her face. "You can't talk to me like that. Go clock out for your break. We'll talk about this when you get back." Emily glared but complied. She headed to the break room, racking her brain over what she could have possibly done wrong. She wanted to demand fairness, but in this economy, a waitress job was better than none. She resolved to stay calm, figure out how to please Don until the end of her shift, then go home and forget about him. She couldn't have guessed that by the day's end, everything would be ripped away from her. Around 3 p.m., when the diner was mostly empty, the door chimed again. Emily, returning from her break, glanced up and nearly dropped the stack of clean plates she was carrying. The silver-haired millionaire was back. He carried himself with the same composed elegance as before, sliding into a booth by the window. Emily's heart kicked into a gallop. She approached him, still reeling from the tension with Don. "Welcome back," she said softly, attempting a smile. "What can I get for you this time?" He folded his hands on the table. "Just a coffee," he replied. his voice measured. "But really, I came to see you." Emily froze me. He nodded, his gaze steady. "You're Emily Carson, correct?" A jolt of surprise coursed through her. "How do you know my name?" She realized he must have glimpsed her name tag earlier, but the manner he said it suggested deeper knowledge. He paused as though carefully measuring his words. "I do business in East Greenhill from time to time," he began, "and I heard rumors of an Emily Carson who works here." Her brow furrowed. "What kind of rumors?" His gaze flickered to the chipped Formica tabletop. "That you might be connected to the Fletcher family." "That's my family name." Emily's heart hammered. She had grown up with her mother, Sarah Carson, and never knew her father. She'd only heard vague references to her mother's maiden name, Fletcher. But how would this man know that? Before she could press further, Don stormed out of the kitchen. His beady eyes locked onto the silver-haired man, then zeroed in on Emily. "What's taking so long with this customer?" "Emily!" He barked, voice echoing through the near-empty diner. "Get him his coffee." She jumped. "Yes, sir. Right away." The man lifted a reassuring hand. "No rush," he told Emily. But Don was already stomping back to the kitchen. Emily quickly retrieved a mug, filled it with fresh coffee, and placed it before the man. Then she glanced over her shoulder, seeing Don's suspicious stare. She sensed she wouldn't be able to talk freely right now. "Sir," she whispered, leaning closer. "If you want to chat, maybe we can do that after my shift." He nodded. "I'll wait." With that, Emily hurried to clean the few tables left. Her mind was a flurry of questions. Could this man really be connected to her mother's side of the family? She knew next to nothing about the Fletchers, only that her mother cut ties with them years before Emily was born. An hour dragged by. As Emily wiped counters and reorganized the silverware station, the man sipped his coffee patiently. Occasionally meeting her gaze, Don hovered near the cash register, scowling. Finally, around 4 p.m., the diner was empty. Don approached Emily with a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said, voice low but forceful. Emily set down the rag. "Okay, Don. About what?" He crossed his arms, eyes flitting to the silver-haired man who was still sitting in the booth. "We've had too many complaints about you, Emily. Customers said you're inattentive, messing up orders." "Complaints from who? I do my best every day." Don shook his head. "Enough is enough. We're letting you go." Her stomach lurched. "Letting me go?" Don gave a dismissive wave. "We don't need your services here anymore. Clear out your locker." Emily couldn't believe her ears. Her jaw trembled with shock, frustration, and anger. "Are you serious? All because I took too long cleaning a table, or served the wrong seat once or twice?" Don just shrugged. "It's done. Leave your uniform at the door." Tears stung Emily's eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. She glanced over at the silver-haired man who watched with an expression of concern. Unable to muster further argument, she ripped off her apron, tossed it onto a nearby chair, and marched into the break room to gather her things. As she trudged out, the man beckoned her over. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble for you. It's not your fault." Emily whispered, her voice thick. "Don's been on my case for months. Let me help," he offered, standing. She brushed away a tear. "I just lost my job. I can't." He pressed a business card into her hand. "Call me, my name is James Fletcher. Maybe there's another door waiting to open for you." Emily stared at the card, then at him. Her mind spun with questions she was too upset to ask. Without another word, she left the Moonbeam Diner unemployed and more uncertain than ever. Little did she know this was only the beginning. Emily slumped onto the worn couch in her shared apartment. Cassie, her roommate and best friend since high school, quickly noticed her reddened eyes and sat beside her. "What happened?" Cassie asked, worry etched across her freckled face. "I lost my job," Emily mumbled. "Don fired me today." Cassie's expression darkened. "That jerk. You're like the hardest worker." There, Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. She was too emotionally drained to muster much of a reply. Her thoughts drifted to James Fletcher and the cryptic conversation they barely had. The business card in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Cass, something else happened," Emily said, pulling the card out to show her. "This guy came in. James Fletcher. He said he's connected to my mum's maiden name. He said he's been looking for me or something like that." Cassie's eyes widened. "Wait, like some long-lost relative? I have no idea," Emily replied, her mind swirling with half-formed theories. "He said he was part of the Fletcher family. My mum, I think that was her last name before she married my dad. But she never really talked about her family. All she said was that they had a falling out." Cassie took the card, examining it. It read, James Fletcher. Fletcher Global Ventures. A phone number and a downtown office address followed. "Fletcher Global Ventures," Cassie read aloud. "I've heard of them. They're huge in real estate technology and philanthropic stuff. I think they sponsor a charity run every year in L. A Oprah Winfrey once mentioned them in an interview with Forbes. This guy must be super loaded." Emily felt a knot in her stomach. "He left me a ridiculously huge tip the first time he came to the diner. Then today, he showed up again, and Don basically fired me on the spot. Now he wants me to call him." Cassie's gaze flicked between the card and Emily. "Maybe you should. You just lost your job. Maybe he can help." Emily wasn't sure how she felt about that. Accepting a job from a complete stranger, albeit a wealthy one, seemed risky. But a bigger question nagged at her. How did he know about her mother? "I don't know. Cass, I need to talk to my mum first." She finally said, "Something tells me she's hiding something about this whole Fletcher family business, and I deserve to know what it is." Cassie nodded, handing the card back. "Good idea. But if this guy is offering a lifeline, I'd at least consider it. Jobs around here aren't easy to come by." Emily exhaled slowly, her eyes drifting to the faded photograph pinned to the living room wall, a picture of her mother, Sarah, holding Emily as a toddler. Her father wasn't in the photo, and Emily had never met him. He'd left them when Emily was too young to remember. Now she couldn't help but wonder if her missing father was part of the reason behind the Fletcher family rift. Later that night, Emily dialed her mother's number, heart pounding. It took a few rings before Sarah Carson answered her voice, warm but tinged with caution. "Hey, Mum." Emily started trying to sound upbeat. "Got a minute?" "Of course, sweetie. Are you okay? You sound a bit off." Emily cleared her throat. She decided to ease into the topic. "I'm okay. I lost my job at the diner, though. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That place was no good for you, anyway." "Yeah, maybe," Emily replied, picking at the frayed edge of the couch. "Mum, I need to ask you something about your side of the family, about the Fletchers." There was a silence on the line. So long, Emily wondered if the call had dropped. Then Sarah spoke, her voice strained. "Why do you ask about them now?" "Because someone named James Fletcher showed up at the diner twice. He claims he knows who I am, that he's connected to us." She heard her mother inhale sharply. "James Fletcher. You know him?" Sarah took a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice held a quiver. "Yes, Emily. He's my younger brother." A whirlwind of shock rattled Emily. She had an uncle. Why had no one ever told her mum? Why didn't you tell me about him? Sarah hesitated. "It's complicated. We had a big falling out with the Fletcher family. Your grandparents, my parents were very controlling. James and I drifted apart a long time ago. I didn't want you getting involved in all that. Why now then? Why would he come to see me?" Emily pressed. Her mother's voice trembled. "I don't know. Honestly, I was never sure what became of him. It's been years since we spoke. He left to chase big dreams, and apparently he succeeded. But I cut ties with the rest of them when you were born. You know how I felt about family drama. I just wanted to raise you in peace." Emily swallowed hard. "Well, I have his business card. He wants me to call him. I'm so confused, Mum." Sarah let out a sigh that sounded half relief, half resignation. "If he's reaching out, it must be important. It may be time you learned the truth about the Fletchers, about why we broke off contact. But honey, be careful. They're powerful people. And sometimes power changes a person." The line went quiet after that. Emily's thoughts swarmed with possibilities. She had just discovered she had an uncle who was wealthy and influential, and she had no idea what he wanted from her. Yet a small spark of hope ignited in her chest, maybe losing her job was the push she needed to uncover her family's secrets. The next day, Emily woke early, determined to face the unknown. She tapped the phone number on the business card, her heart pounding in her chest. It rang twice before a polished female voice answered, "Fletcher Global Ventures. How may I assist you?" "Hi, this is, Emily Carson. I'm looking for James Fletcher. One moment, please." Soft hold music played in her ear for what felt like hours, but was only a minute. Then James's voice came through Emily. "Thank you for calling. I was hoping to hear from you. How are you feeling after what happened yesterday?" She forced a small laugh. "I've been better. Getting fired isn't exactly fun. I'm sorry about that. Listen, I'd like you to come by my office if you're comfortable. There are some things we need to discuss." Emily's hand gripped the phone. "About the Fletcher family. And about your future." James replied, "Trust me, this is important. I'd also like to offer you an opportunity to work for me. We can discuss details in person." Her heart fluttered. A job from a man she barely knew but who was apparently her uncle. She could almost hear Cassie's voice in her head, urging her to consider it. "Okay," she found herself saying, "I'll come by." He gave her the address to a sleek, high-rise in downtown Greenhill. Emily hung up with a mix of excitement and trepidation, quickly texted Cassie, then hopped into her battered Honda Civic. 40 minutes later, she stepped into the marble-floored lobby of Fletcher Global Ventures. Polished glass walls soared around her, and well-dressed professionals rushed about with briefcases. Emily felt self-conscious in her second-hand blouse and scuffed shoes, but she pushed forward to the reception desk. Soon she was escorted to James's corner office on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panorama of the city. James stood by the glass, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the humble diner seat he'd occupied just a day before. "Emily," he greeted, gesturing to a plush chair by his desk. "Please have a seat." She sat scanning the office. A large painting hung behind the desk, and on the shelves were framed photos of James at charity events, with well-known figures like Jennifer Aniston and Richard Branson, further proof of his extensive connections. "I appreciate you coming," James said, settling into a chair across from her. "I realize how sudden this must be." She nodded, swallowing nerves. "My mum told me you're her younger brother." "So, you're my uncle." He offered a sad smile. guilty as charged, I haven't spoken to Sarah in a very long time. There were circumstances. Emily leaned forward, curiosity burning. Why the estrangement? James sighed, folding his hands. We grew up in a conservative household. Our parents, your grandparents, were very strict. When your mother started dating your father, they disapproved. Things escalated, and eventually she fled, determined to raise you without their interference. I left soon after to carve my own path. Unfortunately, I never managed to reconnect with Sarah Emily's voice, caught in her throat. So why now? Why come back? And how did you even know where to find me? I've kept tabs on you for the past couple of years, James admitted quietly. I knew you were working at the Moonbeam Diner. I also learned you were struggling financially. I wanted to step in earlier, but, well, I wasn't sure if you'd even want to speak to me. So I watched from a distance. She stared at him, grappling with a wave of emotions. Betrayal, relief, hope. You say you watched from a distance. That's kind of unnerving. But I guess I appreciate that you're here now. What do you want from me? He leaned back, surveying her with a steady gaze. I want you to join my organization. Your mother might have told you, but the Fletchers run an empire across various industries. I have more on my plate than I can handle alone. I believe in supporting family, even if we've been estranged. And beyond that, there's a matter of inheritance. Her eyes widened. Inheritance. James nodded. Our parents passed away recently. They left behind a considerable estate. Sarah was entitled to a portion, as am I. But your mother never responded to the estate lawyers. Legally, you might also have a claim. Emily's heart pounded. The idea that she might be owed money from grandparents she never knew was surreal. But overshadowing that was a sense of betrayal. Why hadn't her mother told her any of this? Yet she felt a surge of guilt for blaming her mother, who'd always done her best as a single parent. There's a lot to process. She finally said, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable stepping into that world just yet. James nodded sympathetically. Take your time. In the meantime, consider my offer. You can work here with me. There's a position as my personal assistant open. It's yours if you want it. I'll pay you well. Train you. You'll see how this world operates from the inside. Emily studied him, searching for any sign of manipulation or false charity, but he seemed genuine, albeit reserved. Maybe this was the chance she needed to turn her life around. She remembered Cassie's words. Jobs around here aren't easy to come by. She inhaled, okay, I'll do it, on a trial basis. But I want to know everything about my mom, my grandparents, and the inheritance. A slow grin spread across James's face. Fair enough. Welcome aboard, Emily. As they shook hands, Emily felt a tremor of excitement. She was stepping into a new world, one filled with promises of wealth, family secrets, and shadows from the past. She had no idea the storms that awaited her. Within a week, Emily's world transformed. Instead of waking early to haul trays of coffee at the Moonbeam Diner, she found herself in the plush offices of Fletcher Global Ventures. She traded her pink apron for tailored suits James had provided, high-quality attire that made her feel like a different person. Her role as James's personal assistant was both exhilarating and daunting. She scheduled meetings with international partners, drafted emails to philanthropic organizations, and even traveled with James to meet prospective clients. The learning curve was steep, but Emily, determined to prove herself, soaked it all in like a sponge. Yet not everyone at Fletcher Global Ventures welcomed her with open arms. Chief among them was Roxanne Marshall, the company's head of operations. A tall, imposing woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude, Roxanne didn't bother hiding her skepticism about Emily's sudden arrival. "So you're James's new personal assistant?" she asked one afternoon, giving Emily a once-over. "He didn't consult me when he hired you." Emily tried to remain polite. "He didn't exactly consult me before firing my old boss, either." She joked, hoping to diffuse tension. Roxanne's expression remained cold. "We have an HR process here. Protocol, skipping them makes us vulnerable." Emily suppressed a sigh. "I understand, Ms. Marshall. I'll do my best to learn quickly." Roxanne made a disinterested sound and walked away. Emily felt her confidence waver. Despite James's support, it was clear that not everyone trusted her sudden position. Later that afternoon, while sifting through old Fletcher family documents for a project James assigned, Emily came across a file containing inheritance details. A pang of unease shot through her stomach. Her name was listed under an addendum. Emily Carson, potential beneficiary. She scanned the lines. It mentioned a trust fund, along with a condition the beneficiary must be recognized as a legitimate heir by the Fletcher family. The entire thing read like something out of a Victorian novel. She had half a mind to call her mother right then. But she hesitated, worried about stirring up old wounds. That evening, James invited Emily to a charity gala to represent Fletcher Global Ventures. Cassie insisted she borrow a designer gown from her friend, who worked at a boutique. Slipping into the elegant dress, Emily barely recognized herself. She arrived at the gala, with James stepping onto a red carpet lined with photographers. Bright flashes blinded her, and she clung to James's arm nervously. Within minutes, she spotted celebrities milling about: Morgan Freeman giving an interview, Ariana Grande chatting with event organizers. It was a far cry from the noisy bustle of the diner. James guided Emily through the crowd, introducing her as his niece and personal assistant. Many guests seemed genuinely warm, offering kind words about family reuniting, but Emily also felt the piercing stares of those who saw her as an interloper. In one corner, she spotted Roxanne Marshall, sipping champagne, her eyes never leaving Emily. Trying to ignore the tension, Emily struck up a conversation with a venture capitalist who praised James's philanthropic efforts. The man kept glancing at Emily's name tag. "Carson, you say. Are you part of the Fletcher legacy, dear?" Emily forced a smile. "I suppose I am. Through my mother?" "Ah," the man mused, swirling his glass. "I heard there was a family rift. Good to see old wounds healing." Emily excused herself shortly afterward, feeling a swirl of emotions. It became clear that everyone knew about the Fletcher family drama. She wanted to talk to James about it, but he was busy greeting donors. Then, as she navigated through the throng of guests, someone grabbed her elbow. She turned to see an elderly woman with piercing blue eyes, hair pinned in an elegant chignon. Her gaze was intense, but not unkind. "You must be Emily," the woman said, her voice low. "I'm Victoria Reynolds. I was friends with your grandmother, Rose Fletcher." "My condolences for your loss." Emily's throat tightened. "Never met her, actually." Victoria's eyes shimmered with sympathy. "You look so much like Sarah, your mother. It breaks my heart. You never knew Rose. She was a complicated woman, but she had a good heart. She asked about you in her final days, hoping Sarah would come back." Emily swallowed. She didn't know how to respond. Hearing that her grandmother wanted to meet her felt like a punch to the gut. She felt a pang of regret that she'd never had a chance to know her. Victoria placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your Uncle James was the apple of your grandparents' eye after Sarah left. But trust me, they loved both their children. You and your mother are as much a part of this family as anyone else. Before Emily could ask more, Victoria was swept away by a conversation with a colleague. Emily stood alone in the middle of the bustling gala, tears threatening to escape. She realized in that moment that she was inheriting not just money or status, but a legacy of heartbreak and broken ties. An hour later, James found her by the marble fountain. The gala was winding down. "Emily, are you all right?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "I've just learned a lot tonight." James offered a sympathetic nod. "I understand. Let me get us out of here." As they headed home, Emily leaned her head against the car window, city lights blurring past. Her heart felt heavy with the weight of new truths. She couldn't help but wonder if her grandparents had truly wanted Sarah and her back. Why had her mother never returned? And what new dramas awaited Emily now that she'd stepped into this glittering, perilous world? Emily's induction into the Fletcher world moved swiftly. On one hand, she felt exhilarated by her new role, traveling to meetings in executive jets, learning the ins and outs of corporate strategy. On the other hand, an uncomfortable sense of mistrust gnawed at her, fueled by Roxanne's sneers and the whispered rumors among employees who questioned her sudden ascent. One afternoon, she was in James's private office, reviewing philanthropic portfolios, when she found another file labeled Project Redwood Curious. She opened it. The file detailed a massive land development project that Fletcher Global Ventures was pursuing. It also included a list of potential conflicts, one of which was with a local grassroots organization fighting to preserve forest land. Emily's stomach churned. She knew East Greenhill had forests on the outskirts that people treasured. According to this file, Fletcher Global Ventures aimed to build luxury condos, risking the displacement of wildlife and local communities. Why hadn't James mentioned this? She confronted him that evening as he was preparing to leave. "Uncle James," she said hesitantly, "I came across Project Redwood. Are we really planning to cut down part of East Greenhill's forest for condos?" James glanced at her wearily. "Emily, it's complicated. The world moves forward. Development can bring jobs, infrastructure. People need places to live. But at what cost?" She pressed her voice, quavering. "Those forests are precious ecosystems. Locals love them. This will cause a huge public outcry." He sighed. "I was going to tell you eventually. This project started before I took the helm. It's a big revenue source for the company, one of our largest expansions." Emily frowned, recalling that she'd grown up near those woods, collecting pine cones with her mother. A sense of betrayal washed over her. So that's it then. Money over the environment. James looked pained. "It's never that simple. But trust me, I'm not blind to the concerns. We're working on environmental offsets. And..." She shook her head, stepping back. "It just feels wrong." He reached out a hand to her shoulder. "Emily, you're new to this. But I appreciate your honesty, and I do value your input. This is exactly why I wanted you here, to remind me of the human aspect. Let's discuss this further soon, okay?" She nodded, though uncertainty still gnawed at her. As she left his office, she ran into Roxanne, who gave her a smug smile. "Touched a nerve, did you?" she quipped, as if reading Emily's mood. "Excuse me," Emily snapped. Roxanne folded her arms. "Fletcher, Global Ventures was never built on sentiment. If you're going to survive here, you'll need to toughen up. Your idealism might amuse James, but it won't last." Emily glared. "Good night, Miss Marshall," she said, curtly brushing past her. That night, Emily's sleep was restless. She dreamt of trees being bulldozed, animals fleeing in terror, and a corporate tower rising from the ruins. Yet in the distance, she saw a flicker of hope, a child running with a pine cone in her hand. When Emily reached out to stop the bulldozers, she saw James standing at the controls looking torn. In the morning, she woke with a start, sweat beading on her forehead. She didn't know how to resolve her growing conflict, her gratitude toward James for lifting her out of unemployment, and her moral compunction about the company's actions. As she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, she realized that stepping into the Fletcher family might cost her more than she'd bargained for. A week passed, and tension in the office soared. Project Redwood made front-page headlines in the local paper painting Fletcher Global Ventures as a ruthless corporation, destroying natural habitats. Protesters gathered outside the company's tower, chanting slogans against deforestation. Emily felt caught in the crossfire. She believed in progress, but also in responsibility. Part of her wanted to raise her concerns publicly, but she feared jeopardizing her precarious standing within the company and with her newly discovered uncle. One morning, as she walked through the protesters to get into the building, a young woman named Karina held up a sign that read, "Save our forests." Their eyes locked. Karina recognized Emily from their days at East Green Hill High School. "Emily, what are you doing working for these people?" Karina asked, disappointment lacing her voice. Emily opened her mouth to explain, but was drowned out by the chanting crowd. She managed a strained whisper. "It's complicated. I'm trying to change things from the inside." Karina's face fell. "Don't become a sellout. Emily, this is our home. They're destroying Emily." Hurried into the building, her conscience stinging. She took the elevator to the 42nd floor and found James pacing in his office phone pressed to his ear, frustration radiating from his every gesture. "Look, we'll issue a statement," he snapped into the phone. "I understand. Just handle it." He hung up and turned to Emily. "We've got a crisis. The media is all over Project Redwood." She nodded. "I know I had to push through protesters to get in." He exhaled heavily. "We're going to hold a press conference tomorrow. I want you there, alongside me, to show a united family front. We'll promise to conduct an environmental assessment, maybe reduce the development footprint." A wave of relief mixed with dread washed over her. At least James was willing to make some concessions, but would it be enough? Later that day, Emily was flipping through documents for the press conference in a meeting room when Roxanne entered. She shut the door behind her, a knowing gleam in her eye. "James is really pulling out all the stops for you," Roxanne said, crossing her arms. "He's letting you, a total newcomer, stand beside him at the podium." Emily bristled. "Is there something you want, Miss Marshall?" Roxanne smirked. "I find it interesting that James invests so much trust in you, especially when you haven't earned your stripes. Are you sure you're prepared for the scrutiny?" Emily clenched her jaw. "I'll do my best, which is what everyone here should be doing." Roxanne's eyes narrowed. "Fair enough. But a little advice. This press conference is high stakes. If you slip up, if you say the wrong thing, you could ruin your reputation. And Fletcher Global's. Don't expect mercy from the press." With that ominous warning, Roxanne spun on her heel and left Emily slumped into a chair, heart hammering. She was in over her head, but she couldn't back down now. That evening, she video-called her mother. Sarah's face appeared on screen, lines of worry etched in her brow. "Emily, you look tired. Are they working you too hard?" Emily tried to smile. "I'm okay, Mom. Just a lot of chaos about this Project Redwood. I don't know what to do." Sarah sighed. The Fletchers always had a thing for big projects, big risks. But you have a good heart, Emily. If anyone can steer them toward the right thing, it's you. Emily's eyes stung with tears. She needed that encouragement. Mum, I also found out about Grandpa and Grandma's estate and about you being entitled to it. Why didn't you ever claim it? Sarah looked away. It wasn't worth the pain. Sweetie, I didn't want their money. Not after everything that happened. But if they left something for you, I won't stop you from taking it. You deserve whatever chance it might offer. Emily nodded, feeling both compassion for her mother's wounds and a growing determination to carve her own path. Thanks, Mum. I love you. I love you too. Emily, be careful. The Fletcher name is powerful, but it comes with a price. As Emily ended the call, she stared out the window of her small apartment. A million thoughts whirled in her head. Family legacy, environmental crisis, her uncertain place in this corporate empire. Tomorrow's press conference would be a pivotal moment, one that could either cement her role in the company or shatter everything she'd worked for. She steadied herself with a deep breath. I won't let fear stop me, she resolved. She had to stand for what was right, even if it meant facing the wrath of the media, Roxanne's scheming, or the hidden forces within Fletcher Global Ventures. Little did she know the next 24 hours would bring the most dramatic twist of all, one that would force her to question everything she thought she knew about her uncle, her family, and her own identity. The following morning, tension buzzed through Fletcher Global Ventures like an electric current. Television crews and reporters gathered in the building's main atrium, where a stage had been set up with microphones and a Fletcher Global Ventures banner. Emily stood backstage with James. She tugged nervously at her blazer. Recalling Roxanne's warning, James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Just speak from the heart, Emily. We'll promise changes, and you can share your personal connection to East Greenhill. Show them we care. Emily nodded, swallowing her anxiety. The crowd quieted as James stepped on stage, camera flashes erupting in a strobe of white light. He cleared his throat into the microphone. Thank you all for being here. I'm James Fletcher, CEO of Fletcher Global Ventures. We recognize the concerns surrounding Project Redwood. Today I'd like to announce our revised plan to incorporate greater environmental protections. Before he could continue, a reporter shouted, "Isn't this just a PR move after public backlash? How do we know you're sincere?" James held up a hand. I understand the skepticism. That's why I'd like to introduce someone who grew up in East Greenhill, someone who shares our commitment to preserving the community. My niece, Emily Carson. Emily stepped forward, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear her own voice as she leaned into the microphone. She scanned the crowd, spotting Karina among the protesters in the back, arms crossed, watching intently. Good morning, Emily began, voice trembling slightly. I was born and raised in East Greenhill. I love our forests and our community. And while I've only recently joined Fletcher Global Ventures, I've voiced my concerns about Project Redwood. I'm pleased to say the company is listening. We will work closely with local conservation groups. Suddenly a voice cut through the atrium. Lies, gasps rippled through the audience. Emily froze as a disheveled man in his late 30s pushed to the front of the crowd, brandishing a folder of papers. Security guards moved in, but James motioned for them to wait. The man glared at James, then at Emily. Your revised plan is a sham. You're still planning to bulldoze 80% of the forest. Murmurs spread among the reporters. Emily turned to James, her eyes wide. Is that true? She whispered. James's face darkened. I don't know who this man is, but I'm Alan Brooks, the man shouted. Head of the local conservation committee. We obtained your internal memos. They clearly state you intend to push forward with the full project. Once public scrutiny dies down, the crowd erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. Emily felt nauseous. She turned to James, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Roxanne appeared on stage, seizing the microphone. "We deny these allegations. Mr. Brooks is trespassing on private property. Security, please escort him out." Alan tried to protest, but security dragged him away. Reporters shouted questions. As James quickly ended the press conference, Emily stumbled off stage feeling betrayed. She cornered James in a side hallway. "Uncle James is there? Any truth to what that man said?" He ran a hand through his silver hair, exasperated. "Look, the memos he's referring to are old." The board of directors insisted on contingency plans in case negotiations fail. "I'm trying to do the right thing." "Emily, why didn't you tell me there was a contingency plan to continue with the project?" she asked, her voice shaking. He sighed heavily, "Because I was hoping we wouldn't need it. But corporate decisions involve many voices, not just mine. I'm fighting for the modifications, but I have to manage shareholders and profit margins too." A swirl of anger, disappointment and heartbreak coursed through her. "So you're not fully committed to preserving the forest," she accused softly. James tried to place a hand on her shoulder, but she stepped away. "Emily, you've been thrust into a complex world. I'm sorry if it's not as black and white as you hoped." She stared at him, tears threatening to spill. "I just need some time to think," she whispered before turning and walking away. Outside, protesters were still gathered, chanting louder than before. The crowd parted to let Emily pass, some calling out her name, others leveling accusations. She spotted Karina again, the look on Karina's face. Disappointment and anger cut Emily to the core. Now the press was in a frenzy, social media ablaze with rumors. Fletcher Global's stock began to drop, and employees whispered about Emily being a PR pawn. When she arrived back at her apartment that evening, she collapsed on the couch, drained. Cassie rushed over, concern etched in her face. That was intense. "I saw it all on the news." Emily buried her face in her hands. "I can't believe I stood on that stage, endorsing a plan that might be a lie." Cassie rubbed her back gently. "Maybe your uncle's telling the truth, that he's trying, but the board is pushing back." "I don't know what to believe," Emily said, voice muffled by her hands. "All I know is that everything feels like it's spinning out of control." Little did she know this press conference debacle was only the tip of the iceberg. The betrayal and secrets lurking in the Fletcher family were about to unravel in ways she never imagined, testing her loyalties and her very sense of self. Days turned into a blur of damage control. Fletcher Global Ventures scrambled to release statements clarifying their environmental commitments, while protesters led by Alan Brooks and Karina vowed to escalate their efforts. Roxanne seemed to relish Emily's discomfort, hinting that Emily's emotional outburst at the conference had made the company look weak. Amid the chaos, Emily received an unexpected call from Victoria Reynolds, her late grandmother's friend. "Emily, I'm sorry for how the press conference turned out," Victoria said. "I have something you need to see, documents from your grandmother's personal files. It may clarify why the Fletcher family is the way it is." Emily, feeling she had nothing to lose, arranged to meet Victoria at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. Over a pot of chamomile tea, Victoria slid a worn leather folder across the table. Inside, Emily found letters handwritten by Rose Fletcher, her grandmother. They described fierce arguments with her husband about controlling James and Sarah, about forcing Sarah to give up the man she loved. There were also references to an illness Rose battled, one that she didn't want, overshadowing her children's lives. One letter in particular stood out. "My dear Sarah, if you ever read this, please know I love you and Emily. I never wanted you to feel unwelcome. I was powerless against your father's demands. Forgive me." Emily's tears smudged the ink. All her life, she'd assumed her grandparents didn't want her or her mother. But this letter showed a grandmother filled with regret, longing for reconciliation. "This is why your mother stayed away," Victoria explained gently. She was hurt, felt rejected, but Rose never stopped loving her. And as for James, he was torn between pleasing his parents and forging his own destiny. Emily's heart ached. It was too late to meet her grandparents, but perhaps she could still mend what remained of the family. She thanked Victoria and drove back to Fletcher Global Ventures, the folder clutched in her lap. That evening she confronted James in his office, where he was working late. She placed the folder on his desk. "Uncle James, I spoke with Victoria Reynolds. She gave me these letters from Grandma. Care to explain why you never told me how she really felt?" He flipped through the letters, his expression somber. "I didn't know about these specific letters," he said quietly. "But I knew our mother regretted how things ended with Sarah. Still, I wasn't sure how to reconcile you and your mum with that painful history." Emily's voice trembled. "She loved us, James. She wanted us in the family. Why couldn't you just say that?" He shook his head. "I was scared, Emily. Scared that reopening old wounds might drive you and Sarah away again. I've made a lot of mistakes." She softened, seeing the genuine regret in his eyes. "I don't want the family's legacy to be about greed and conflict. What if we try a different path? We can work with the protesters, set up a real conservation program." James hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, let's call an emergency board meeting tomorrow. We'll present a new plan, one that truly reduces the environmental impact and invests in community development. I'll do everything I can to push it through." Relief and hope mingled in Emily's chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll stand by you if you do this." The next day, they convened the board. Roxanne's eyes flickered with disapproval as James and Emily announced a revised plan, one that scaled back the condo development, significantly dedicating a large portion of the land to a nature preserve. But that will slash profits by nearly half one. Board member protested. James raised his chin. Sometimes the right decision isn't the most profitable one. The Fletcher name should mean more than just money. A heated debate ensued, but with James's leadership and surprising support from some younger board members who valued social responsibility, the plan was approved by a narrow margin. Roxanne, outvoted, stormed out in frustration. That evening, James, Emily, and a group of local activists, including Karina and Alan Brooks, met in the redwood forest. Together, they walked the winding trails, talking about how to protect the ecosystem. Cameras captured the moment, this time painting Fletcher Global Ventures in a more positive light. When a reporter approached Emily asking if she felt vindicated, she smiled through tears. "It's not about winning or losing. It's about doing the right thing for everyone, business, community, and nature." In the weeks that followed, Emily and James worked tirelessly to restructure Project Redwood into a sustainable model community, balancing housing needs with conservation efforts. The media lauded it as a landmark shift in corporate responsibility. Roxanne eventually resigned, disgruntled by the new direction. And for the first time in years, the Fletcher name was associated with hope rather than division. At home, Emily tearfully reconciled with her mother, sharing the letters from Rose Fletcher. They both wept for the lost chance to unite sooner. Though they couldn't change the past, they could build a future free from bitterness. And in a final gesture of healing, James set aside a portion of the inheritance to fund scholarships for underprivileged youth in East Greenhill, naming the program after Rose Fletcher, Emily stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Redwood Nature Preserve, her mother by her side, James on the other. As she cut the ribbon, cameras flashed, capturing a moment of triumph and redemption. She had lost her job at the diner, only to discover her uncle, a hidden legacy, and the power to enact real change. Looking out at the lush forest, Emily realized that sometimes you have to be pushed into the darkness to find the light. And in her case, the light shone brightest when she chose integrity over fear, a choice that rebuilt her fractured family and preserved the place she called home. And so concludes the whirlwind journey of Emily Carson, a young woman who went from slinging coffee at the Moonbeam Diner to standing at the forefront of one of the most transformative projects in East Greenhill. Her courage and compassion helped reshape Fletcher Global Ventures into a force for positive change and reunited a family torn apart by secrets and pride. If Emily's story teaches us anything, it's that perseverance, honesty, and heart can overcome even the most towering obstacles. If you've been moved by this tale of resilience and hope, we'd love for you to share it with others who might find inspiration here. Please like this video, share it on your social platforms, and subscribe to our channel to stay connected with more stories that illuminate the power of family love and standing up for what's right. Your support helps us continue bringing meaningful content to light one story at a time.